First, thank you for inviting me here, and congratulations to put all these people together here. That's really impressive. When I'm participating in such events, I have a crisis of identity, actually. Being a pediatric rheumatologist, it's hard for me to identify with being a regulator. And the topic of my talk, nuts and bolts of clinical trials in rare, I'm afraid I will not be able to address your expectations, because clinical trials, as you may or may not know, in Europe are not in the competence of centralized authority. They are fully in the remits of member states and their national competent authorities. So I think the more appropriate title would be How Medicines for Children Are Approved in the EU, or what European Medicines Agency is able to offer for drug development for children with rare diseases. And that was to add to my declaration of interest. So this is, I will give you some very general information, and I'm happy then to answer any questions if there are any. This is our new building in Canary Wharf, where we hope to stay for some time. We serve over 500 million people living in the European Union, deal still with 28 member states, and work in 24 official languages. 27% of global sales of medicines are being authorized by us. So our main task is to evaluate applications for marketing authorization, but also we do other things, many other things actually. Among them, we focus more and more on to facilitate development, pre-authorization and post-authorization access to medicines. We do monitor the safety of medicines across the life cycle and provide information to physicians. And the secretariat, which is placed in Canary Wharf, is a completely different concept to FDA. We are about only 900 people there, among them about 300 scientific staff. But we work with more than 4,000 scientific experts from all Europe. We have 7 scientific committees where member states are represented in all of these committees. And we have many working parties, again, constituted by member states. There are 2 pathways for marketing authorization in Europe. One is so-called centralized procedure, which we are dealing with, and second is still a lot of medicines are authorized via national procedures by national competent authorities. The certain medicines are obligatory going through centralized procedure, and if you have a look here, basically all medicines we are talking about here today are belonging to this group of medicines that go through centralized procedure. So, of course, there is obviously a benefit for citizens and also for companies to get through centralized procedure because they are authorized at the same moment for all 28 member states. And there is centralized safety monitoring, and also product information is available in all languages at the same time. I would like to note here that on top of a normal marketing authorization application containing all the data which are defined by the legislation needed for regular marketing authorization, there are 2 types of marketing authorizations when there is not when the not full package of data is available at the time of marketing authorizations. Of course, in both cases, there is an unmet medical need driving the whole situation. In exceptional circumstances, the comprehensive data are not available and never will be available. It's not expected that the package will be completed at any time in future because the rarity of the disease, for example, or due to unethical studies, if they would need to be performed, or the state of scientific knowledge. While conditional approval in Europe means that at the time of marketing authorization, the data are not completed, but there is a condition to come with the full data later on. And this needs to be renewed and condition fulfilled later on. So, as I said, the Secretariat is not actually deciding about things. We are more or less organizing and coordinating the evaluation. The evaluation itself is done by different committees. And the main committee is the Committee for Human Medicinal Products, CHMP, which actually deals with applications. It's important to note here what is agreed at CHMP and what is not agreed in this beautiful room. So, opinions on the marketing authorizations and variations are agreed by CHMP, but the decision is made actually by European Commission, so not by the agency. And the main difference to FDA is that clinical trials are also not agreed by EMA, but by member states, as I already said. But what we offer and what we do is giving scientific advice on the development and develop general guidelines on the diseases or cross diseases like pharmacokinetics, immunogenetics, and so on. I will mention PRIME later on. It's a program for early dialogue with companies with promising drugs, and this is also agreed at the level of CHMP. But orphan designation is given by specific committee for orphan medicinal products, and pediatric investigation plans are also agreed by a special committee, pediatric committee, which was established 10 years ago according to that time new pediatric regulation in Europe, which requires that in principle all medicinal products that have an ambition to be marketed in European Union should consider also development for children and come up with pediatric investigation plan. Basically, it's two most important articles of this regulation describe what data or what is needed for new medicines and also for medicines that were already authorized at the time when the new legislation came into force. This is, for example, the case of anakinra, which was authorized at the time before pediatric regulation came into force. But when they came for new indication for CAPS, they had to provide pediatric investigation plan also on top of CAPS, also for already authorized indication rheumatoid arthritis. And because the legislation says that for similar pediatric disease, the plan should be submitted, so similar disease is JIA. And for anakinra, the PIP contained the studies or data for JIA, for systemic JIA. So I consider this as a success, for example, as an example of success of pediatric regulation. And I think in this context, it's actually good that systemic JIA is part of JIA. And it is similar, considered by the name similar to rheumatoid arthritis of adults. Otherwise, the whole concept of pediatric regulation would not apply in this situation. So I think the systemic JIA benefits from being JIA. I don't understand why anakinra has not completed yet the PIP and why it's not authorized for JIA yet, but it is in the PIP. Of course, not all medicines are suitable for children. So there is a system of waivers, either for all pediatric population or for some age groups. And there is a system of incentives for pediatric development and also for orphan development, but these two rewards cannot be combined. Difference to American situation is also that the rare diseases, orphan diseases, are not exempted from pediatric regulation. And now it's 10 years anniversary of this regulation, so the regulation itself demands that it's rediscussed after 10 years. So we are working on the evaluation of these 10 years, and the European Commission will publish the document for public consultation, which you are welcome to contribute to, how we can improve this regulation. So this is just to review that although the main perception is that we deal with marketing authorization evaluation, we do, and we tend to do more in the pre-submission phase, not only in orphan designation, scientific advice, and pediatric investigation plan, but also for these new initiatives. And of course, we focus also on post-marketing data. So how, in this pre-submission phase, how do we support the research and innovation of medicines? We have a platform for informal discussions with mostly academia comes to discuss new ideas on a really informal way. PIP, scientific advice, I mentioned. We have a system for qualification of novel methodologies, classification of ATMs. We have a system to support SMEs with incentives and fee reductions, etc. So whenever, for example, small consortia, academia develops a drug, they can use this tool. And of course, for orphan designation, there is and in pediatrics, it's free of charge, protocol assistance with the incentives offered. And what we are working now currently is several initiatives. 2 days ago, it was published, this document on proactive publication of clinical reports. Finally, after a long time of fights and political discussions, this is being born. So investigators have access now to past clinical reports from clinical studies. Adaptive pathways is not, yes?
Complete study report.
You have to submit application, describe what you want, why do you want it. There will be some gated access to it, but in theory,
Study report will be available.
in theory, of course, commercially sensitive data are redacted, but the results should be available. Adaptive pathways means that drugs are to be, yes, 1 minute, thank you, are to be approved in 2 steps. First, for limited population with limited data, and then for full marketing authorization later on based on real-world evidence. This is this prime mainly for products that have really high unmet medical need. They are game changers, so-called. So we offer very early dialogue and very early going through the development of the product with the nominated rapporteur from CHMP from the beginning. Patients are members of our committees. They participate in evaluation of medicines. They are members of the working parties. They contribute to development of guidelines. They are invited to ad hoc expert meetings when evaluating individual medicines, so they play a very significant role more and more. Okay, so this is just to emphasize that this dialogue between all stakeholders is our priority now. That's why my agency agreed to send me here for 2 days. And the patient is really in the center of all the discussions between all stakeholders, regulators, industry, HTA bodies, healthcare professionals, but not only in the center, but actually all should start from them. Thank you for your attention.
We'll keep the question.